The Rover SD1. The flagship car created by the Rover Triumph division of British Leyland, introduced in 1976, would go on to win the European Car of the Year award in 1977. Marketed by the company as tomorrow's car today, ironically the SD1 would go on to have its legacy tarnished by the short-sightedness of BL's management and militant unions, resulting in poor build quality. Despite this, the car's futuristic design and bold interior became a staple of motoring in the UK and the rest of Europe. The SD1 would be discontinued in 1986. Or so you would think. The Rover SD1 would have a second chance at life. In 1985, on its deathbed as it was about to be replaced by the Rover 800, the SD1 would be resurrected in a rather cruel way as the standard 2000. Rebadged and re-engineered with an engine dating from 1947 with a crudely copied cylinder head that resembled the Rover P6's Heron unit. From its height as India's most luxurious domestic built car to the lawsuits it caused that folded the company that made it. This is the extraordinary story of the Standard 2000 and how the Rover SD1 cheated death to become India's most exclusive car. Hello everybody and welcome to this video. If you're not subscribed already, please make sure to do so. It really does help me out and you get to see more of this. More history videos and more cool projects like 2600R, my Rover SD1 and my Ford Cortina project. This video is on the Rover SD1 and its rebirth in India and how it took the company that made it to bankruptcy. Do you have any Rover SD1 or Standard 2000 memories? Let me know in the comments below. And what car would you like me to cover next? Personally, I'd love to cover the Hillman Avengers Adventures in Iran. But without further delay, let's get into the rise and fall of the Standard 2000. First, it's important to look at the history of Standard Motor products in India and how it laid the groundwork for the Indian version of the Rover SD1. After India gained independence in 1947, an assortment of car companies tried to gain a foothold in the market. After a series of negotiations with the Indian government, a year later in 1948, Standard Motor Products of India was formed. Overall, car sales in India were incredibly small compared to its enormous population. In 1951, the first locally built Standard Vanguards rolled off the production line of the Madras Standard factory. That year, the population would reach 361 million people, but with only 159,000 cars registered in total, the need for a big luxury car was far in the future. In spite of this, as the population grew, so did demand, and with that, the Standard Motor Company of India would follow. In 1961, production began of the Indian version of the Triumph Herald, becoming the Standard Herald. The 60s were a significant time for Standard in India. The reliance on British imported parts was severed in 1965, when engines, gearboxes and axles would start being produced natively. With the new ability to build crucial components in the country, this gave the industry the tools it needed to rise with the demands of the newly motoring public, which was growing, and by the start of the 1970s, the number of registered cars quadrupled, with 682,000 cars being registered by 1971. A year later, in 1972, the Gazelle was launched, a rebodied Herald with new suspension and a new differential. Production capacity would rise with it, laying the foundation for the Standard 2000. In 1981, the Indian car market was beginning to flourish, and Standard was keen to be part of the incoming car revolution. But without a car for the 80s and the lack of funds to develop their own, this meant they would need to turn to outside sources, leading the director of Standard Motor Products of India entering discussions with Austin Rover in the UK about the possibility of producing one of its models for the Indian market. In 1984, a deal was struck. Austin Rover would provide the company with the rights to produce the Rover SD1 in India. This included 12,000 body panels as well as the other parts needed to make full cars, but no drivetrains. Without the PE166 2.3 and 2.6 litre engines or the 3.5 litre V8, this meant Standard had to improvise. The Standard 2000's engine would be a modified version of the 1947 Standard Wetliner Inline 4. The cylinder head would be redesigned to resemble the Heron unit found in the P6, with simplified valve gear. The advantages of this would be fuel economy, but with its rushed engineering, it would come back to haunt Standard in the future. Compared to the BLO series and its 99 brake horsepower, which was already just enough for the SD1 in the UK, was just not up to the task of moving such a large executive car at a decent pace. There would be another disadvantage: fuel economy. The new engine was rated at 22 miles per gallon, with the O series being rated at 33 miles per gallon. This was a significant reduction. This would be paired with the locally designed 4-speed gearbox, losing the refinement of the 5-speed boxes offered as standard in the Rover SD1. Suspension would be raised by an inch at both the front and back to cope with India's unforgiving roads. In April 1985, with 8 million cars on India's roads, the Standard 2000 was launched, in the hopes it would capture the top end of this emerging market. The car had a price of 212,000 rupees, which was around £12,000 back in 1985. This would equate to around £36,000 today, but this was a problem. With its main rival, the Hindustani Motors Contessa, India's most luxurious car before its launch, being 85,000 rupees, the Standard 2000 was more than double the price. The Contessa was a familiar face as well, being based on the Vauxhall Victor with a twist. It was powered by a BMC B Series inline-4 engine, another 70s car with an older drivetrain. The price of the Standard 2000 made it the most exclusive car on India's emerging car market, with only the wealthiest buyers being able to afford it. The build quality was reported to be adequate for its time, with the Madras factory's production capacity at 16 cars per day. During its production run, this would never be reached. Everything was going well. The car was a desirable futuristic piece of exclusive luxury in mid-80s India, giving the motoring public something to aspire to. But then, it would all start to go wrong. The initial cars were sold mostly constructed of the British imported parts purchased in the deal. As these parts ran out, the part production would become localised, but at the time the company wasn't in the position to produce these parts at a sufficient quality. This would have a knock-on effect. The lack of supply meant the demands of the market couldn't be met, and as the production of these parts ramped up, quality issues would appear in the cars that did finally roll off the production line. The Standard 2000 would then be hit with another blow, a big one. Initially, the company claimed that the fuel consumption was around 22 to 28 miles per gallon, but owners were working out slowly that they would only get around 16 miles per gallon. Customers were not happy, and with wealthy customers comes lawsuits. Customers began filing claims against the company for misleading mileage claims. This would have a devastating financial impact on the company and severely reduce the car's appeal on the market. This would produce an unrecoverable slump in sales. The Standard 2000's production would end in 1988, with its final production numbers claimed to be in the hundreds rather than the thousands that the company had hoped. Standard Motor Products of India would be taken over 2 years later after going bankrupt. It is claimed that the lawsuits of the Standard 2000 and the subsequent drop in sales were the overall contributing factor. The end of the Standard 2000 would have an incredible impact for SD1 owners. After its discontinuation in 1988, parts would be sold back to the UK for Unipart to sell on the spares market. In 2006, Rimmer Brothers would buy the remaining British-built stock from the remnants of the company, resulting in the SD1 having incredible parts availability. Even now in 2024, you can still buy brand new front wings and other body panels. The car in India would go on to be improved by its later owners, with the original engines being replaced with engines such as the Isuzu Diesel 1.7. With the enthusiast owners of today making the Standard 2000 the car it should have been on launch, making sure the legacy of the car that once stood at the top of India's car market is not forgotten.